Appreciate it.
Right here. As I was saying, I hope that this becomes interactive. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about, like let's discuss it. Some of it's my own kind of experiences over my career as a referee on what I think is foul, what I don't think is foul, and a lot of it has to do with the principles and how we can maybe tie those together. So, by all means, ask me questions. Argue with me too. I think that's part of the sport, of officiating, a difference of opinions, a difference of views from where you stand. So, the definition of contact, the state of condition or physical touching. And what I like about that is FIBA goes into really defining like what the condition is or what the state of it is. So we shouldn't seek to interrupt the flow, highlighted in any game unnecessarily or penalize incidental contact, which doesn't give anybody an advantage or disadvantage. That's the first key, advantage, disadvantage. I'm sure you guys have heard that over the years. And then what's great about FIBA, because a lot of us do referee on common sense, so it actually has the language in the textbook or in the rule book, application of common sense each game, bearing in mind the abilities of the players concerned and their attitude, conduct during the game. So common sense does have a place in our game, even though it's not written black and white. And then of course, consistency, maintenance of balance between control of the game for flow and having feeling for what participants are doing what's right for the game or expecting what's right for the game. So using common sense, thinking about flow and not interrupting the game allows us to officiate contact. And that's FIBA language. So depending on what level you're at, you get a chance to do pre-games. So some of us at higher levels have to do pre-games, and some of us at the high school men's league games, we get there with our shoes on, we throw it up. But I think it's if we want to be good judgment officials, and I've always said I think there's two types of officials. There's the official that calls the game by the rules, and the official that calls the game by their judgment. And if you think, I ask my officials to think like players and coaches, really judgment is all that matters. When we tell a coach, by rule 3.2, and we quote the rule, that's not their language, they're not understanding it. But we tell them what we've decided as far as judgment goes, they seem to understand it. So judgment does go a long way, but not if it's against the rules. So you have to use kind of both in your decision making. So I think the first thing we need to do is identify what game we're on. Are we at a high school game? Are we at an OBA game? And then we say, is it still OBA? When we say OBA, we also have the kids who are just starting and the kids are still getting recruited to go on scholarship or university. So even in that same bracket, we've got different levels. A lot of leagues nowadays give us direction. They either communicate it through a supervisor, they communicate it directly, they communicate with the local board. So we should really determine what level we're refereeing, what the league's expectations of us are, and what our supervisor, the boss, etc., expects of us. Because let's face it, if we're not adhering to their expectations, then how can we ask for another game, more games, etc.? It's important to me that we get the first call right and the last call right. Those are kind of the keys to the game when they walk onto the floor and think, great call, good start to the game, the officials feel good about themselves. And the same with the last call. You never want to walk out of that gym thinking you left a sour taste in someone's mouth. You impacted the game in a negative way. And then lastly, define contact. Like I said that earlier, that definition, there's a definition of contact, there's a FIBA definition, but you as a crew on that game, could be 2 of you, could be 3 of you, what are you today defining as contact? And that should help you to be consistent with one another throughout the game. What FIBA says is to be fair and to be firm. And I think that goes back to that first layer, first line there, what level are we refereeing, what league are we in, to be fair and firm. So there's no wrong, no right, as long as we are applying the same judgment, the same rules, same contact throughout that game. I think it's important that as a crew we be flexible. If our hand's here, he might be the crew chief and say, guys, every time this hand touches here, I want a foul call. Somebody in the crew might say, well, can't we let him play through this type of play, that type of play? And that's where as a crew we got to be flexible to come up with an agreement on what that type of play is going to be called consistently. And we can't have one person dictating it, and we can't have a full argument either with the 3 officials or the 2 officials. We have to come to an agreement. So approach these games with your philosophy of contact to be, allow yourself to be flexible. And you may come out of the game being a better official. You may understand that your partner a bit better of what they deem and see as part of the contact during the game. But it may just help you from a development perspective as well. I also think judgment-wise, we can go through the definitions, we can go through the criteria that make up contact, and we can go on the floor with a unified crew. But if we don't evaluate the game as it starts and finishes, and we get better as a crew, meaning sharing information, watching what plays are happening, what plays are being called, what plays are not being called, we have the chance to be the best team out there. And being the best team. I think that is important to us as officials, to walk out with our heads high, giving everybody a fair chance to play basketball, applying good contact judgment, and being on the same team. So definitely as a crew you can get better as you go if you are willing to be flexible, watch, process, learn. It also sets a tone for the rest of us. If we walk into a gym after 3 officials were there the week before and they set the tone, we follow and adhere to it, we're setting the tone for the rest of the season. We're giving the players, the coaches, the fans expectations on what to see and feel. And if you do a good job with judgment, then you're setting that tone for the rest of the season. These are all the words that get into defining contact or what matters, but obviously it's called the obvious. There's another part of that you may have heard, called the obvious, not the obscure. The obvious obviously has to be illegal contact. It has to provide some form of advantage or disadvantage to the players. This is a newer acronym. Does that play impact something to do with rhythm, speed, balance, and quickness? And then, does it matter, like I said earlier, is there a significance? And the biggest thing we do is we call all these things, but then we don't make a big decision on a big play. And that can't be, so I put that at the bottom there. All this is very important to how you justify your contact decision, but we can't miss big plays. We have to be willing to officiate, otherwise we're not doing justice to the game. I picked a couple of areas that I think might help you as officials on what to call, how to call. They're not the only fouls in the game, but hand checking is definitely one where as a board, as a panel, and all the places I officiate, I see us very consistent on this, on how we call it. You guys see differently, but it also goes back to that first aid. What level of officiating are we at, and then how do we apply it like this? So hand checking, legal use of hands to impede, influence movement progress of an opponent with or without the ball. Key to all these plays are on-ball officiating, off-ball officiating. If Brian and John are playing one-on-one and Charles and I are in the post, I still can't put my hands on Charles to take away his freedom of movement. And that's where, if you hear referees talk about on-ball play, off-ball play, we have to be equally as good at calling judgment off-ball as we do on-ball, because plays mostly, basketball players here, are you getting? And most of basketball plays start off-ball. And if we're not catching off-ball contact as it relates to holding, hand-checking, etc., we are missing the play from the start. FIBA rules: defensive player can momentarily touch any opponent with his hand anywhere on the court, as long as it does not affect that those legal disadvantage, advantage, balance, rhythm, quickness. So it does allow for a hand to be on. Be clear, because I think sometimes we see a hand on and it's automatic, and sometimes we see a hand on steering, moving, impacting balance, rhythm, speed, and we don't call it. So it does allow for a hand to be on, but it has to meet the criteria of disadvantaging the offense or the defense. Does that make sense? That part of it? I think open court dribbler for a hand-on foul versus play in congestion or in the key area is much easier. A player out in the open gets 2 hands or a forearm that bumps them off speed, out of rhythm, is an easy play for coaches, players, fans to understand. It's out in the open, common, everyone has a view of it. There's 2 reasons why I think hand checking becomes different once we get, to me, inside the 3-point line, or maybe some of the smaller levels inside the paint, the key. Because at this point, it's congestion. So now we're going to be figuring out how to call a hand on when there's probably 5 to 7 players in the way. Now we're almost stretching to come up with that hand checking. And then at the higher level, these players are so good and so quick at releasing the ball to the goal. As soon as they hear that whistle, they can put the ball up on the net. And that forces us, we make a good judgment call on hand checking. Now we have to say, did the ball go in, count it, was it a non-shooting foul, inline, sideline, throw-in? And they are so good at putting the ball in the net, you're putting yourself in the position to have to argue with one coach that it is not a shooting foul, or the other coach that the basket's good. And now you got to pick your poison. So in my personal opinion, hand checking in traffic, I try to suggest we stay away from it, unless it's egregious. unless it's that obvious where we just run somebody off their path, bump somebody, hold somebody. But if it's just that simple steering, hand checking in the laneway or in the three-point line for the older players, at that point, I think it's best to give them a little bit more stretch. Argue that?
No, I think, no, it's good. And then just stay with it, because now if it impacts the shot, you've gone through traffic, now you can hold the whistle and now make the call if you need to, if it impacts the shot. Right?
Really good point. The defender that's probably riding the offense in the paint is probably equally not smart enough to take their hand off when they become a shooter. So if you're like John said, you just held that whistle that extra split second, half a second. Now they become a shooter. Now that maybe they're up and away from congestion, the hand's still on. Much easier for everyone to see that they're impacting a shooter. And the NBA players do it great. If they can't defend, they're coached to make them uncomfortable, and how they do that is to keep a forearm on the player. They try their best not to extend, but they make them uncomfortable. That's why I'm saying in congestion, we can really do that type of play a little bit differently. And then it just says in the FIBA that two things. Automatic foul, two hands on. That has to be considered steering, holding, impacting balance, rhythm, speed, etc. So two hands on, automatic. But then because we've always thought to referee the defense and not let them get pushed out of the way or hooked, we have to recognize that both offensive and defensive players have the same rights.
Hey, Chris. Is there a difference between two hands on, arms extended, the two hands right by your side?
Two hands, arms.
As a defense,
in the
you
notes
know what I mean?
I was going to say, is there any areas on the floor that you think two hands should be allowed? No.
The post.
Right.
In the post. If Charles Walters is posting me up, and I'm only allowed one weak, small arm to hold this giant man from dunking on me, chances are I'm going to be posterized in the paper tomorrow. So if he's just going to back me down, there's no chance I can defend. This becomes stabilizing myself versus extending or moving somebody. So there are areas that two hands on, we used to say two parts of the body, one hip, one forearm foul, one hand, one forearm foul. We have to use judgment when it comes down to that type of play in the post, or potentially you need those two hands just to stay on your feet.
What happens when he turns around?
Charles has no lift anymore, so there's no chance that you're going to put the ball down. When you square up to become a dribbler, but then they get heads off. So you're stabilizing yourself, right, which is more of a legal play that we would see, or we would, maybe it's not legal by the book, but we would allow for that just from a stable perspective. But now when they become a shooter or square up, then they have to come off, because that can be seen as holding them from being able to lift.
And that's important because that happens quite quickly.
Yeah. That's a back down play, what we would say.
And again, but our arms cannot be extended even in post play, and he has the ball, two hands on
Two hands on.
and extended. That's a hold, right? Correct.
And there's some stuff later on. How to determine that and evaluate that is where you stand as an official, where you move to officiate that play. And we see enough games, whether it's all local level, all rec league ball, all university, it doesn't matter. You should be getting better plays every single game because you get to see more of them. It's reps. You know, you could be a great basketball player and know the game to the end, but if it's your first game, you've got a lot to learn as an official because it's so different. And those type of plays like this out, that may seem like a foul if I'm in bad position. But if I'm in between, I can see what this does, stabilize versus leaning on, moving in. So later on, I think it talks about moving. Post play, another area that we see it all over the place. We see little guys in the post nowadays because the big guys want to shoot threes. We see mismatches in the post and disadvantages because guys are having a clutch grab hold. The number one thing in the post is, to me, verticality, or cylinders, if you guys have heard that language in some of the books. I am, as a defender, I'm allowed to be in athletic, legal guarding position, and then I have to stay in that cylinder. And that cylinder, like you said, Tony, is not that. My cylinder is this. And if that means I gotta stabilize or lean on, then as long as I'm in my cylinder, holding vertical, then I'm a legal defender. And the offense has the same responsibility to stay in their cylinder. So it's a foul on the defense or offense in the post position if they use any part of their body, shoulder or other, to get to the opponent out of position or interfere with freedom of movement by extending arms, shoulders, hips, etc. And that really applies to both the offense, defense, because you will see guys backing down a defender, and what can they do to defend themselves would be illegal, and vice versa. You use a guy up into the offensive player and move them out on the block. I think that's the way you used to defend it when you played men's ball, right now. Got me smashing there? See, remember when I refereed the play? It should be viewed as a physical area on the floor. They're big guys, they shouldn't be charged with foul because they're banging, right? Let players be big guys should be able to guard big guys and play physical basketball, but it can't become rough. So let them be big, let them bang, but when one becomes an advantage over the other, or one can be dislodged or unable to move, now we have contact foul in the post. So I think we kill this part, where just any part of their body that steers them, when you start throwing steers or takes them away from moving, becomes a foul. And that's the same on the offense. And we are getting to see a lot more offensive fouls now in the post, because they feel that that no-charge semicircle is to their advantage, and if they get you in it, they can just career through you. And that's, by rule, they can't do that. So what I think we have always refereed the defense. In the post play, it's great to step back if you can. Not all courts allow it. So be deep and wide to get the best angle to determine who is causing the advantage. And if you all do this, some of you guys have seen me explain calls like that. This is offense, defense, and they have their own cylinder. And once somebody moves one way, that's when we get out of our cylinder, and that's how you got to look at these two bodies. Are they in their cylinder, and is either one moving inside or outside of their own cylinder, creating advantage, disadvantage? Post play is the hardest to referee, and what's unfortunate about it is if we only referee, we're just starting to referee, we're in high school, we don't see a lot of post play. None of those kids want to stand on the block. But then, so we don't get enough reps, enough C's in the post. Then we go to university level, we see a real difference between female post-up players and the male post-up players. And even the male post-up players aren't really as big and as aggressive as they used to be. It's a little bit more skill and kind of step backs, if you were saying square ups when they want to pump, they can dribble by. So to be good post player officials, it does take a lot of reps. Even the NBA doesn't have a lot of post playing, so it's not even we can see a lot of it on TV. And we really got to look at those two players in their cylinder and be on the floor where we can get the best angle to make a good decision. I just wrote down the bottom 3 seconds. Sometimes it's a cheap way to stop the nonsense and just say 3 seconds. Two guys are banging the heck out of each other. You don't know if it should be defensive foul, offensive foul, guys in the lane. It's really just a dumb, it's boring basketball. It's draining us. 3 seconds. Count 2.5 and call 3. Even though OUA, Tom Christie hates it. But it's a great way to stop it. 3 seconds, everyone else. Unsporting or disqualifying fouls, I think, is another area that we want a clean game in FIBA. That's what they're driving us all to provide, is a clean game. It's filtered a message down from the NBA. The game around the world at times has been extremely rough, and there's no way to control it because some of these leagues out there are just mayhem. So FIBA's made a pretty big push to have a clean game, and that's why they've made that big emphasis on unsporting fouls and how we're going to, we've got 5 different ones now, where originally we had just 1. So how do you keep the game clean? This is probably the #1 thing. When you're on your game, it helps to have some knowledge from seeing these teams before, but there is always a player or 2 or 3 that aren't necessarily there to play basketball. And we can see that at the men's leagues too, and even at the high school level, or even those people that matter. There's a player there that's, his mindset, her mindset is just different than the rest of them. If you can identify that player, you're at an advantage. Anything to do with rough play, excessive or severe contact, dangerous plays, sometimes we see an innocent play that is dangerous. Not all players try to undercut a person laying the ball up, but sometimes they get caught out of position and they swoop a foot and the player goes down hard. That's a dangerous play, and we're trying to send a message to those defenders that do that. It's an unsporting foul, not because you meant to hurt anybody or be malicious, but you got yourself caught in a bad position, and you should be better at not doing that. So it does give us some areas to stretch out in sporting fouls. And really, like, it's not room for basketball. It's not tolerated. We want a clean game. We got a fun game. We've all probably done games looking around maybe where a player gets extremely hurt and you're standing as an official and you feel pretty bad about it. Even if you called a foul, even if it was legal play, like, we don't want to see our players get hurt. It says never fear. I think this is a bit of a strong sentence in FIBA. Evaluate the action, do not think about the penalty. There are certain times that we need to process what the resumption of play and the result of the penalty is. So I wouldn't say fear it, but certainly factor in when you make that decision what you're actually giving that team. A disqualifying foul, a second sporting foul. The FIBA rule is 1 tech, 1 sporting. So as much as we want to have a clean game, we also want to use that decision wisely. It's always easier to upgrade than to downgrade, so if you make a decision, analyze it, and upgrade it if necessary. It's not a hard thing to do, and most of us in here probably have had the experience of doing it, where you see a foul, you think it through, and you upgrade it to unsporting. And or, we just case it out, make it personal, and then get together with your partners. Give yourself a chance to breathe, because some of these plays are pretty intense, pretty aggressive. Common foul, Charles. And sometimes we get together as officials, and I already know I'm upgrading it, but I just want to have a couple seconds of breath and say, Charles, I want to upgrade that. You got anything against it? I mean, I'm just really using him as a sounding board. I'm not truly asking him for his opinion. I'm just giving myself a chance to breathe through it, think through it, and then upgrade it.
And it looks better too, from the optics point of view, when you believe partners, you do say something.
I don't think I kept it in here, but there's a great, so it was a double whistle scenario, common foul and sporting foul. FIBA recommends the original official calling it a common foul to go right to upgrading it. Which, what you're saying, it brings the crew together versus getting together and saying, why don't we call it common? Now it seems like an arm wrestle versus you saw on sporting, I'm trusting your judgment, I'm going to make mine from common to unsporting too. The 5 C's, I don't know how, Farhan, when we go OUA, are we writing in the book C1 versus C3?
Not in the scorebook, but it's reported.
In our game reports, right? So it's not overly important for us to know the difference if we're not working game report type games, and I think OSB have game reports too.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a way for FIBA to track nowadays, and it'd be up to the league to be tracking them on what's more common, a C1 that's more of like an intentional foul versus a C5 that's reaching through the plane or fouling a cutter during a throw-in. So I would suggest we know our C1, 2, 3, 4s, 5s. But if you go to a coach and say, why is it a technical, why is it unsporting? And you say, because it's a C4 foul, they're going to look in your eyes and get out of here. I don't know what you're talking about. You got to use basketball. Right? This 4 is basically a clear foul. So I think that sporting fouls, use basketball language, understand really what happened. It's a high penalty for it, so be careful with it. Like you said, get back up from your crew. And if there are players, and then in reverse, if there are players that are out there to hurt, injured, to be idiots, they're better off with 2 unsportings right away than they are with a couple common fouls and see if they'll calm down. They're not there to play basketball. They gotta go. Any questions at all on sporting stuff?
Chris, sorry, would you suggest when you're making that call to just go like this first instead of going right to it? You know what I mean? Like you say you want to upgrade it, so you go, so something happened, right? You boom, and then now you probably want to get together, like you said, with your partner. Because sometimes we're so close in the play, like you're this close, and you may not see, your judgment's obviously not going to be the same as somebody else who's your other partner seeing as a Calvin, I think we need to upgrade this. Because it had it happen.
2-part answer.
Right.
Like Charles said, it always looks better to get together and say, you got something. You can always upgrade it. So that first common foul, we had a play at Western a couple weeks ago, a player in a breakaway situation, the defense came across and held the shooting arm. Common foul. So imagine 2 players in the air holding the shooting arm, not allowing them to shoot. Whistle went in a common foul. Never let go until the 2 of them came to the ground. So basically drag the offense to the ground. Second whistle on sporting foul.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by not going right to
Right.
the unsporting, giving yourself a chance to see it through. If you're not 100% sure, getting back up, having a conversation, or like you said, I may have only saw the hold, and maybe I took my eye off the play.
Right.
But another official outside saw it right to the finish and came in and said, upgrade that.
Yeah, that's why I think it's easier just to go boom first, and then, like you said, you can upgrade, rather than going this right away, now it's like, shit, once you've got, like you said, you can't go down. If you've gone like this already right away, you pretty much, you're done.
So what I would challenge you with
Mhm.
is, that's a great situation if you have two strong partners. But we've all been in games where we have partners that aren't willing to, or aren't brave enough to come in and say, Chris, let's upgrade that. So sometimes you gotta be a game manager and make that decision for yourself. You can't always rely on another official or two to come in and say, hey, we better upgrade that. And I mean, it sounds bad, I don't mean it this way, but I've been around a long time and I have heard referees say, I'm not calling in front of Chris because it's Chris. And that's not the guy we want to referee with, because I want us to walk out there and get everything right. And by all means, if anyone in this room's got a call in front of me because I'm asleep or missed it or just didn't see it, I would rather that whistle go off and we have that discussion afterwards and go, thank you so much, Calvin. Versus you, or somebody not being brave enough to call in front of another referee because it's their primary, or they're more tenured, or they're the crew chief. We hear it all the time. I don't want to call in front of the crew chief. That's not, once we get on the floor, there is no more crew chief. So if you have a strong crew and you can trust them to come in and give you good information, then yeah, sure, come in and get together. But you can't always rely on that. Sometimes they just don't have the nerve to do so. I don't need to go through the difference of C1, 2, 3, 4. Do you guys agree with that?
Chris, do you wanna just talk about, like some of these, unsporting, there's, nuances to them.
Yeah, so no effort to play the ball.
That's why I said go.
We have lots of those. They really should matter. You know, sometimes a hand gets caught in a jersey and it looks like I pulled a jersey, but really it's got stuck. Can we get away with common foul versus a sporting foul? You gotta use your best judgment. What does that game, that night, require? Because if you do call that, this is a hold where this is oopsie, accident, like, you know, so we see the shirt out of the corner of our eye and we go into sporting. Gotta really know what that meant. Excessive contact, I say anything above the shoulder, contact to the head, forehead, that's excessive contact, especially at the kid age. And the coaches will argue and say, he was trying to block the ball, but we need to protect concussions, we need to protect knockouts, excessive contact. But then there are plays where I'm gonna make contact with the head, and it's gonna be a common foul. Went through, it blocked the ball and light contact, I don't think that's deemed to be an unsporting foul. This is if you probably mean C3, because we debate
Right,
this
that's what I mean.
as a
It's
crew
the
all the
third
time. So
one that you have.
FIBA says that there's a bit longer language. I would challenge you guys to read what they say.
So,
it's
sorry,
a-
just to interrupt, I put all 5 in my report, word for word. This is Chris's, summary, which is great, but I think you should put them beside each other, because then you'll understand what Chris is kind of saying in this. So, I just saw people taking pictures of it, which is great, but go back to the actual language and then compare it and see what relationships Chris is making, because there's things that are,
Number 3, the language has something to do with what is it? It says
I can't read
an
it.
action with the sole purpose of stopping transition. And what I've changed in my mentality is not every play in transition is an unsporting foul because it has the word transition to it. If I'm playing defense in the front court and the guard dribbles past me and I wrap around and stop the shoulder, the elbow, and the ball comes loose in a front court set, that's a common foul, right? But if it's in transition at the division line and I do the same thing, why does that deem to be unsporting? I can't hear you.
Last line of defense. Is that?
I'm in front.
Oh, in front, okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, if you want to call it that, then you'd be calling it
down.
C4, which is
C4,
clear.
good.
Basically, I see C1 and C3 are very much the same type of unsporting foul, right? The difference between C1 and C3 is they want to take the take fouls out of play in FIBA, right? So it's basically they're in transition, not making an effort to play the ball, just trying to stop the play because they got numbers going the other way.
Well,
Right.
if I was gonna rewrite it, I would take the word transition out,
Right,
because you can have a basketball play in transition.
sure,
I would hone on what a take foul defined is. And we see guys armbar, stick out their hip, wrap around with hold'ems, easy C1s and or C3s because they are C1 because they're intentional. But they're classified in the C3 because it's in transition.
correct, right,
Not the intent to take a shot away, it's the intent to stop a break.
to stop the break,
Because that's not a shot.
that's right,
So, like I said in the beginning, if we're defining what we're calling that day and the crew's on the same page, this play will come up and we'll call it appropriately on the floor because it was an armbar and a dribbler or a basketball play. Because from the front, I can just as easily reach in and steal the ball and move the other way. Or I could foul you. And is that a clear path or a take foul? If I'm right in front of you and I reach to steal it, I could get that ball illegally and go the other way. Basketball play.
Yeah.
Or I could go through the arm to get it, and it's a common foul. It is, in my opinion, that wouldn't be a take foul versus the round.
Agreed. That's
So
okay.
you gotta use your judgment there.
What do you got, Farhan?
I was gonna read the wording so that maybe you can add to it. The actual wording is an unnecessary contact caused by the defensive player in order to stop the progress of the offensive team in transition. This applies until the offensive player begins his active shooting.
So it's not very
Add or
defined,
subtract,
it's
yeah.
just not definitive enough on what play should be a take foul and what play shouldn't.
So your wording of obvious and this wording of unnecessary, like to you, is that the same thing, or do you differentiate between those two terms? Unnecessary contact versus obvious effort.
I put obvious because I think that says, obviously, I'm fouling to stop a break, to take out
I
transition.
think it's unnecessary and obvious to me.
Unnecessary, it would be the same thing. I'm
It would be the same thing.
unnecessarily
Putting out.
arm barring you to stop the
When
break.
it's obvious, it's unnecessary, as far as I'm
So
concerned.
it's,
There is a gray area
Playing
in
with
both
words,
those
right?
the
words.
important thing is to be on the same page
There
when you
is, like,
start the
there's no way
game.
you could define what unnecessary or obvious is, it's subjective,
It is still subjective.
right, it's very subjective,
The two terms that are gonna come in now you're looking at would be action and intent, right? Because that's what they want you looking at. They no longer want you looking at intent, they want you looking at the action. Which is why I think you're explaining that makes it very, and like there's a lot of ambiguity to it. Versus that strip play where you come down and make the basketball play and there might be contact. Versus making that strip play and it's not a basketball play on the ball.
My own personal judgment is because these players at university level, college level can get one tech, one in sporting, and they're out, they can easily get a technical foul because you said something in my ear and I didn't like it and I said, I retaliated back, technical foul. Now I make a basketball play to stop a transition on sporting and they're ejected from the game, and that could easily happen in the first period.
That's where I'm saying something like that, I think you do have to look at intent. The action might look bad, but if they're intending to go after the ball and you can save them that unsporting, I think that's something that should be taken into
Be fair, be
consideration.
firm.
Yeah.
Is that fair to charge an unsporting foul when it was a basketball play?
Absolutely.
So the language, by all means, read the rules or the definitions, make it up for yourself, but we do have, why I thought this was important, because we do have people on our different panels in Ontario saying every foul in transition is automatic, and then we have other players, the referees saying non-basketball play should be unsporting. So you gotta get yourself on the same page and what that game means in that day. Four is a tough one for the primary official to call, and this is where we need team officiating, we need help. Some of these plays happen so quick, a steal will go the other way, and we have a foul. Reach in, grab, block, trip, something. And it does take another official to be able to have the width view and say, last line of defense, no one in front. So when we do see these clear path fouls, that really takes the team officiating, and that's to my point with you, Calvin, like sometimes you don't have a team, you don't have the guys on the floor to help you. You gotta be real strong on your own. It's great when you can be common foul, take a breath, get your two partners together, or your other partner, and say, did you see anybody further? Because the coaches don't know the rule really, majority of them don't. They're gonna be yelling for clear path no matter what. So will the players. And now you don't wanna just adhere to a coach because he's yelling. And nowadays everything's on tape. We have expressions, beat the tape. So you don't wanna make a call. and then the tape shows otherwise, especially on a decision that you could get help on. Because this is a rule, not judgment. And those are keys, same with the no charge semicircle. By rule, if there's no other defender between the new offense and the basket, it's an unsporting clear path foul. It's a rule. So you're not using judgment there. So get the rule right.
Chris, we got
That sounds weird coming from me.
7 minutes left.
7? Yeah, we're almost done. Last 2 minutes, a really good preventative officiating is get your officials and official putting the ball in. These teams are going to foul to stop the clock. Remind them, best way you can. If you're going to foul, Team Black, if you're going to foul, don't foul till the ball comes in. And they may not be smart enough to adjust, but at least you know as an official, you took every precaution you could to give them information. It's the same way you can only go in the front court. You're helping the game, you're being fair, but you're being firm. Hey, don't foul till it comes in, game on, and if they still do it, you checked your box. If you don't do it, they're not doing it. That good, Farm? Switch grabbing this thing?
Yeah.
This could take about 45 minutes. Fake foul
This
flopping.
is important. This is very,
This
very
is big.
important.
Okay, so maybe,
You can pick and choose, but you got about, let's say 7 minutes from now, but you pick and choose what you wanna go for.
there's 3 decisions you have to make around the word fake foul. Faking a foul comes with 2 penalties, a warning or a technical foul for faking a foul. And when you fake a foul, in order to get penalized by one of those 2, it should be the true definition of fake, meaning nobody touched me. So they was following around. Or a shooter goes up in the air and probably fell down trying to draw contact in your university career. How many times?
10 times a
A
game.
lot. So really get on the same page on when are we going to use the flop warning versus a blocking foul. Because we've got 3 plays, like I said. Fake foul that's warning or tech is when there's 0 contact. And they've now tried to do something to embarrass you as an official. So there's another part of it, see, ground up. So you can see where it all starts. So I would suggest not to use your mechanic unless it is a true fake foul. That nothing happened, the player decided to embarrass you. It does have the option here, if they do something flagrantly, flopping or faking, you can go right to technical foul. And some players are off like that. If we have a flopping foul, now we have 2 other decisions. Sometimes play, and this is FIBA's language by the way, some of these plays, there is contact there. And FIBA, if you remember earlier, allows for incidental or marginal contact. There's contact, the player goes down, they didn't flop, it wasn't enough for a charge, it wasn't a blocking foul, we can actually play through that. It's incidental, non-impact contact. Now, if there is contact and it does impact, so some of the players in a charge situation will go down early, so I'm flopping, but I haven't been touched yet, so I'm not faking, but I'm trying to flop, and then my legs perhaps bring down the offense. Now, some of us think we should go flopping, right? That again comes with a big penalty because the next one's technical foul, or because they've created contact that could be deemed illegal during that process of falling to the ground, we can charge a blocking foul and put them to the free throw line. So you will hear some people say, hey, let's just warn. The warning comes with a lot. So a lot of it's block charge, number 1, so get on the same side as that. And then secondly is the offense. And there's 2 plays, and I'm just trying to skip forward. There's the dribbler that does this, we've all seen that, right? And then there's the shooter that, there's 2 types. One kicks up to try and draw contact, or one shoots and just falls. So if we're refereeing ground up and they're in their cylinders, we can make good decisions. We now, further to this, if we have the offensive player kick out and taking a defensive player out, we can go offensive foul. And if we're staying with that play, ground up and down, FIBA 2 feet on the floor till the shooter is finished, we can make a good decision. And we still have a very bad habit of this, watching the shot. So we'll stand here, mark it 3, ball, corner of our eyes, see guys go down, and now we're guessing on the decision. Where we referee with 3, there's no excuse for leaving the shooter. When we're with 2, You know, there's, still think there's no excuse, but there's areas where you've got to go back and referee rebounding. Well, fake foul flopping. Basically, it's not sportsmanship. They're embarrassing us, or they're trying to trick another opponent. We could talk about fake flopping all day long. So it just says fakes but doesn't cause legal contact, warning, next warning, technical foul, 1 per team, and that's it. Remember, if it's a defensive warning for flopping, that same team can't flop on a shooting foul as an offense. So sometimes we forget that we warn for that. Flagrantly can go technical foul, and then here, incidentally, without a consequence, we can have a no call. Those 3 things really ingrain in your head because the players are happening more and more to try to outsmart us. And these are just some of my own things that I try to think about as an official. So on game days, I really walk my mind through this stuff. I don't agree as a basketball player. I grew up playing basketball, and I've learned to referee as a basketball player. I don't think marginal contact should allow the ball to be turned over. So that's just a personal thing for me. Even if it's marginal, you didn't earn the right to turn the ball over. There's more offense-initiated contact. There's 2 areas that is driving me nuts as an official on the Washington. The offensive guard flings himself into the defender and then falls off this way and throws it over his shoulder, and we put him on the free throw line. You have to be good on the defense on that. And the second one is when a big guy is really good at holding his cylinder and verticality, and the guy smashes into his chest, and the defense does that, and we charge him for a foul. We got to know that that's a normal person's behavior to go out of their cylinder because it's caused by the offense. Those 2 things drive me nuts. We talked about that. I use the word embellish. And I also go to the table and I say 34 blocking because he flopped. And I get in trouble for that. But at least I'm telling the story that, and if I'm having a good day, I'll say blocking because he flopped. Even if I'm having a bad day, I'll just say he flopped. But at least you're telling a story at the table that the coaches understand language. If you say blocking, they say, no chance, you got charged. If you say he flopped, then they go, all right, yeah, he does that. Ground up officiating. A great one is just looking for hands. You know, how many guys referees can't decide who did what when you see this action in the rebounding? We can't decide. But if you watch the hands from the start, and we're good off-ball officials, you'll see the first guy that starts the hook. It's normally the second guy that we get, because as soon as I hook you, it's only natural to hook on. So find the hands, and that's in congestion too. Start all periods with a good call. This is big. How many guys at timeouts come over and say, how many games work this week, Brian? Where are you going tomorrow? It's useless commentary. Let's talk about plays, things that are happening, because we're seeing different things. That first timeout is key to communicate. If there's not a timeout in the first period, there's intermission. We should use that to share back information. And we're all guilty of it. Hey, we want to go for steak and beer at the game? Like, but that's not communicating. Use your words. If we can talk people out of the game, out of fouling, excuse me, our words help them. They listen, they hear us, they say thanks, and it goes back to what FIBA says. We want to provide flow. So we can avoid whistles by talking to players, do it. This is all, if you want good judgment, you got to be in the right place. You got to think ahead, you got to anticipate what might happen. You guys asked about a foul in the post. Once a player catches in the post and starts to back down, we should start anticipating what the defender might do. Or if we see a guy catch it and he gets written out, what's the first thing that the offense is going to do? Probably step back down. So if we're anticipating play, we should be able to apply better judgment. Look in the right areas, call the action, not the gesture. We do buy into the gesturing, right? Go to that player. We're not calling that today. Knock it off. And most of them do. Understanding what we need to see is really just the game, the expectation. We need to understand what we're supposed to do in that game. And if we do, we should be going to look for it. 2 hands are automatic. And the whole let them play thing, that just leads, I can't tell you how many times, let's just see if these guys can figure it out. So first period, 2 guys are hammering. You know what? Let's see if these guys will calm down. Promise you it never calms down. It leads to something fierce. And you got a big game report to do. Contact at the rim, offense initiated, I talked about that. we always have multiple officials at the rim. So look at who's looking at what, and who's gonna call what. Defense, gotta stay in the cylinder. We're gonna see a play or audio showing a play, defense jumping A to B. So they say I'm vertical, but they actually jump vertical and move over to here. So they're jumping A spot to B spot. And then, how are we gonna look at the secondary defender? Are they there in time? Are they jumping in? Are they coming down? On ball, off contact, freedom of movement, everything. 2 minutes.
Like, back to the 1 minute.
One of the things I like to, we don't get the chance, like, if you guys look around this room of 25 of us, Charles and I have been refereeing for over 20 years each, maybe you're older, so you probably got 30, but I bet you we could count on less than these number of hands how many games we've worked together. And we're friends. So we don't get a chance to work with the same officials often enough to know one another's tendencies. So I always say there's certain plays, block charge, and ones, a no call, a screen, hand checking, about those 4 or 5, that really are gonna happen in the first period probably, and they should define how you're gonna call the game for the rest of the night. So I may not have any calls in the first period, but Daniel and Farhan do. I wanna make sure that I'm observing their judgment, so that when it's my turn to make a call, I'm to a degree in line with what they've called in those type of defining moments. Now, obviously, we totally err on a block charge. I don't want to emulate that for the rest of the game. That's a one-off. We throw that out, we start again. But these are the types of plays that coaches say, that was a block, why is this a charge? Why is that an and one and that's a no call? And that's why the first plays of the game as a crew should be able to define what we're going to call for the rest of the game. And if you're not attentive to it, then you will be outside the crew and you will get the questions around, why is Farhan calling all the hand checking here? Why are we not consistent in that and this and that's when we get coaches awake and they bark. Coaches already want to bark at us anyways, so why give them motivation to get up?
Sorry, Chris, can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think the inconsistencies comes from when we're not noticing what our team is not calling,
Yeah, no call.
right? Yeah, but I think there's too much of emphasis on saying, okay, let's match calls, rather than let's match no calls, right? And I think that's where the coaches get up in arms, because we're not realizing what our partners are not calling. Yeah, we're all matching what we're calling, but the stuff that we're not calling, and then we start calling that one, that's when problems
All
start,
decisions need to be matched.
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
What else we got here? I just went into a little bit of so hand on the dribbler. Does it match the rule criteria? We went through that. Does it fit the game we've been calling? Does it match with anything else that's been called? And would you make that call for the rest of the game? Hand check. Screening, we need 2 eyes on it because there's 4 players involved usually, and they can do anything from pushing through the screener, holding the offensive player, the roll takes the defensive out, and etc. And then should be probably the first thing. In your primary, there's a good chance you're going to have a competitive matchup. And ball or off ball, you can't let that out of your sight. That's where the activity starts, especially off ball where they're clutching, grabbing for space. You have a competitive matchup in your area, you need to referee very hard on that and determine what's going to go on. Is it on ball, really good defense, really bad offense, etc.? Or is it off ball where they're clutching and grabbing? And don't kid yourself, the offense off ball has no problem holding, moving, and going up the lane, or just simply pushing on. And because we think the ball's not in play, it's up there, why would these guys do that? And we're kind of not watching, we're on ball or somewhere else. That's where I move Charles and I start to run and he grabs me and boom, we have an unsporting foul. And it's the wrong decision. This one's great, I stole it from somebody, it's not mine. We can always make up with a late whistle, but you can never take away an early whistle. So we talked about processing it and making sure we're right. You can always, a coach can see, it was late, but it was right. You know what I mean? Versus, boom, shit, I wish I didn't call that. You can't take an early whistle away, but you can always make up with the late one. And if you trust your crew and your crew trusts you, I may just not have a play in front of me, a decision, because I had a position, didn't see it, there's 3 or 4 bodies, and another official comes in a little bit late, giving me as a primary the first chance to officiate it, then that's another good decision where I'm not going to just blow it if they think it. I'm going to trust that somebody might help me out. I think that's it for him. Oh, but just fair and firm, we talked about, call the obvious, not the obscure. Don't compromise. Once you guys decide to call a game, stay with it. Make those decisions throughout the game, and then keep the game clean.